I can't even tell you what the plot of the second one is. I just get so lost.
I do too, and I felt like an idiot. We were watching it, and I'm like, am I not following? What's happening here? I was struggling.
Yeah, my wife is always surprised I can't tell the plot of these movies when I watch them so frequently with our daughter. You know, I can't tell you the plot of Frozen or Encanto.
I was just about to bring up Frozen. I was struggling with Frozen.
I can't tell the plot of any of these except the first one. The first Moana, they did such a good job with putting the plot in the hook of her dialogue. It was like,
yeah,
I am Moana from Montanui. You board my boat. Like, I get it.
Oh, welcome into Scoop City on a Thursday, and you know what that means. That's our Thursday road trip around the NFL, but this is going to be the playoff edition. How about the divisional round edition? Don't forget to like and subscribe. You'll get all the information that drops every single Thursday when we go around the NFL inside these facilities with our unbelievable group of beat reporters. We'll go inside the facilities of both the number one seeds, whether that's the Denver Broncos or the Seattle Seahawks. We'll go inside the buildings of each of the number two seeds. We'll also go inside the building in New England, where Drake May is preparing to go against that unbelievable defense, the best in football, the Houston Texans. How do all of these matchups go down? We'll tell you from the mouths of the people that are with these teams every single day. We also have the massive news of John Harbaugh landing with the New York Giants. Dianna Russini is going to break that down unlike anybody else in how that move changes the landscape for the rest of the coaching hires moving forward. So without further ado, let's get this road trip on the road. All right, we got to start off with the biggest news of really this entire offseason. The Athletic senior NFL insider, Dianna Russini, once again with us here on Scoop City. And Dianna, this broke in the dead of night. John Harbaugh, after an unbelievable meeting a lot of people are describing in New York, is going to be the next head coach for the New York Football Giants. What transpired during that what could we call it, that onslaught from New York Giants to make sure that this happened?
Don't let him go. They were hanging on to his ankles at Teterboro. Like, no,
right?
don't
Like,
do
everybody was involved in this, it seems like.
Yeah, no. And there were 6 people specifically involved in this meeting that were representing the New York Giants. And it's obviously everybody that's part of ownership, along with Joe Shane. Jackson Dart was also part of some of the meeting. He was there for just a few minutes meeting with John Harbaugh, having a little bit of a conversation, getting to know one another. But from everything I understand, John was really locked in and asking a lot of questions of the New York Giants. And I think everybody wants to know, what is it that the Giants sold them? What is it about New York? And I don't really think you have to peel it back that far, because John wanted the job. The New York Giants were on his list of teams that he wanted to work for, if anything. And obviously now it was number one. And he can just do that based on how he organized the way he took these formal meetings. You know, on Sunday, he had lunch with Chris Mara, and they laid out a lot of the things that John wants. And that's where the work really was done. And then when he was able to meet with Joe Shane in person and the rest of that crew, most of that was just getting to know one another, talking about some of the mistakes they've made in the past, and things that they want to do moving forward. And, you know, the Tennessee Titans were expecting to be part of this. They were watching Twitter all night last night to see if they were going to have to get on that plane out of Nashville into Baltimore, where they were going to meet John Harbaugh at his house on Thursday afternoon. But that, of course, did not happen. And he gave them a call around 11:30 Eastern last night to inform them that he would not be meeting with the Tennessee Titans, because he was all in on the Giants. And there were a lot of things about the Giants that appealed to him, starting from the things that we talk about on the show all the time, right? At the top, the ownership. He believes in them. He trusts them. Apparently, the relationship already is just off and running in terms of just how they see things. It's so important. You know, it's like a marriage, right? Like when the foundational things are all in line, everything else kind of just comes together. And so they're going to continue those conversations today. A contract is not official just yet, but there were some discussions of how that would look with John Harbaugh and those 6 Giants members. So his agent is involved now, and we're expected to see him be paid on a 5-year deal, and most likely the highest paid coach in football. If not, he's up there. He's probably a little bit back and forth with Andy Reid.
Okay. Andy Reid's up there. Sean Payton's up there in that group.
No, I'm glad we actually brought up. Oh, I'm glad I said it. No. Andy Reid. Andy Reid was part of this, right? So John really leaned on Andy Reid during this process, even before Steve Bisciotti fired John Harbaugh. Jim had reached out to Andy to have some conversations about, should I step down if he wasn't going to get fired? What does next look like? One, Andy Reid has always been a really good friend to John Harbaugh over the years, but of course we all know what Andy did, which was of course leave Philadelphia despite a lot of success, and take his talents to Kansas City, where he had ultimate success and continues to. So, there's a lot of fun little connectors here over the last few weeks, and it's only been a few days, actually, when you think about it. It hasn't been weeks. But I can tell you from talking to the Giants about, half an hour before I hopped on here with you, they're on cloud nine. It's like talking to new people. They are so refreshed and excited about what's next.
Yeah, when I text people there's a lot of exclamation points. I'll just say that in response to text messages about the way things have gone down. Now, you mentioned the things that John liked about the organization, and those are kind of easy to spot. You mentioned the ownership. He's always had great ownership. He's always been a guy that like that kind of solid foundation, like you mentioned, has always been there. There's parts of this roster we know that are kind of there, and Jackson Dart plays a part of it. This young core plays a part of it. Alignment is such a big part of what John was looking for, to my understanding. But what are some things, if any, Dianna, that he might want to go, all right, we need to work on this, or in this building, I know coming in that together we need to fix blank. Are there some of those discussions that have already happened?
Yeah, they're already working on some of that stuff, but. Before we jump into some of those, I am interested in this, and I think you are too. Steve Bisciotti was not a very hands-on owner. No. He communicated a lot with Eric DaCosta, the general manager.
Quietly knows what's going on everywhere in the building.
Correct. He has eyes and ears in the building, but he's not physically in the building. You even heard him in his press conference talk about how he's run this team. The Mara family's in the building. They're there all the time, right? So that's a different concept. And I've spoken to coaches over the years about the difference between having an owner there every day and an owner that just gives you a call on Monday morning, over FaceTime to discuss the Sunday game. So I am curious to see how that will work. The Joe Schoen element in this, I think, is really important to magnify, because there were candidates that were concerned about Joe Schoen that the Giants were interested in. This was not a nobody cared about Joe Schoen's storyline. That is not true. I know John Harbaugh entered this interview process with those concerns, and he did a lot of homework, and he made calls to Brian Daboll, and he made calls to people with connections to Joe Schoen who've known him for years, to just try to understand what he's about. And if John Harbaugh felt that he could work with this. And from my understanding, he signed off on it. Like he thinks it can work, and he enjoyed those conversations. Joe was calling him every single day since Bisciotti fired Harbaugh. Every day they talked on the phone.
Let's go.
And
a relentless individual.
And I give credit to Joe Schoen for that, because he knew he had to bring in this big fish, because what clears the mistakes, the reputation that Joe has carried over the last few years and a losing season better than being the GM that brought in a guy that could perhaps change the future of this organization. So press conference is expected to be next week. The deal will most likely probably get done today or tomorrow, maybe even through the weekend, depending on how that goes. But certainly a new day in the New York area.
Yeah, that's a really good point bringing up Joe, because that was the part that everybody was kind of looking at. We knew he was such a big part of this search, Dianna, right? You've brought it up here on this show repeatedly, his connection to ownership and his importance in this entire thing. I was kind of fascinated because there's been so many reports out there about what Joe had brought to the building, right? Kind of modernizing their scouting system, kind of modernizing some of the stuff that they do behind the scenes. And that is a big part of the way John Harbaugh operates. He wants everybody in their particular role to be innovative, to be pushing forward constantly, right? That's the way John operates. Hey, what are you doing to make us better today. That's like the consistent of John. And I think Joe's done some of those things in the eyes of the Giants. We'll see if they start working together, they consistently feel that way from John Harbaugh and how it works. How does this change the landscape for what's next? I know you and I have talked to a ton of people. It almost has the sense around the league that the next domino would be potentially Kevin Stefanski. Does that still have that feeling? Because there was also a lot of people that just said, if I'm betting, John Harbaugh is going to the Giants. So if that was all kind of the thought.
Everyone was operating like this, like it was always John Harbaugh and the Giants. Now, look, we've been doing this so long. Nothing's ever a guarantee. And it was hard to just be like, yeah, this is it, because we knew that they had a meet. And the smallest things could change the direction of where these meetings go. And they could have disagreed on important things and stuff that John was passionate about, but that's not the case here. So he's in New York. So where does that leave us, right? So you've got the Atlanta Falcons and the Tennessee Titans who were on Harbaugh's radar. Those are the two other teams that were in play here. And I'd heard Atlanta yesterday morning had sort of been informed that it was probably not going to happen. They had no interview set up with him formally in person. They had spoke to him over the phone. So Tennessee met with Arthur Smith on Wednesday evening.
Familiar face.
They are, yes, former offensive coordinator. He was there during some of the good years over the last few years. His family is from Memphis. They live in, they're Tennessee people.
Pretty prominent family.
And I know ownership likes Arthur, like that's for sure.
Yeah.
And so Mike McCarthy will meet with the Titans on Saturday. Robert Saleh will also over Zoom with the Titans on Sunday. Niners play Saturday, right? So he'll do that Sunday. And then I'm expecting this thing to get moving next week, James. I think that's when, look, I know the Titans are going to still have a second round of interviews, so that may take a little bit of time. But as we know in this league, once teams starts, everyone gets kind of ants in their pants. Once they see a team make a hire like this, they want to get moving too. So
of course,
next week should be pretty blockbuster.
Okay, I like that. There are the teams that we oftentimes don't bring up because we've been focused so much on John Harbaugh, and those three teams keep coming up, but there's still Cleveland, there's still Vegas, there's still Arizona. There's these other spots that are also bringing in people for interviews as well. But then there's the one up in Green Bay that we're just kind of, I think everybody in the NFL is just waiting for Matt LaFleur to put pen to paper. I think that's just kind of a, just keep one eye on what's happening here, because as good as Matt is, I kind of thought of this morning. Every contract plays a part in other contracts, right? And I know it's apples and oranges because John Harbaugh was a free agent. And we know in free agency, numbers are always higher. But when I looked at the numbers between John Harbaugh and Matt LaFleur from 2019, when Matt took the job in Green Bay, Matt 76-40-1. John Harbaugh is 76-41. Their playoff records are 3-5 and 3-6. 3-6 for Matt LaFleur. There's a lot of comps there Matt could use to say, hey, man, we've been essentially similar lately over a pretty good stretch of time. Do you think a deal getting done with John changes the pacing or the negotiations that's going on up in Green Bay by any stretch?
Here's the problem. When John Harbaugh can sit across the New York Giants, who know what it's like to win a Super Bowl, he can say he's won a Super Bowl too.
Okay, right? He's 4-6 since he won that Super Bowl in 2012 in the postseason.
That is the beauty of that thing, right? Is it carries weight.
It's for a long time.
It's undefeated. Look, I think let's go back to Packers and Matt. I think it's pretty fair to say that they are in deep negotiations right now, trying to knock out a contract to keep him in Green Bay, which is, from what I can gather as of yesterday afternoon, all signs point to this getting done. Yeah. In terms of the value of it, I would expect Matt LaFleur to be more in that middle rank of coaches that just did deals, right? The most recent contract outside the newer ones, when we're talking extensions here, Kevin O'Connell comes to mind as a name of a number that would probably be around that, what Kevin O'Connell got. Kevin signed a pretty long deal. I would expect Matt to probably sign a shorter one, but we'll see how it shakes out. But yeah, I think all signs point to that getting done. There can always be a snag, and
that's why I said I think everybody is kind of an eye.
You gotta always watch out because you don't know. But
exactly.
It felt really good talking to a lot of different people close to it yesterday. That you weren't getting any like hold up, like, or even some back channeling from the Packers on coaches, because that would be pretty telling too. So that's not happening. And meantime, by the way, the other one you didn't mention, because I was kind of internally thinking as you were saying it.
I know.
You're right. We have not focused on the Raiders that much. We have not focused on the Arizona Cardinals. We have not done much with the Browns. And the Steelers are late to the game, right? So they just started, and I did a show this morning, and they were like, "What are the Steelers looking for?" And I'm like, I think the Steelers are trying to figure out what the Steelers are looking for, right? Because this is all just happening, and so I also think it probably wouldn't hurt if they go with the formula that they just had. They did pretty well.
I think it worked. I think it worked really well. We know what that formula is essentially, right? We're going a little younger. We're going a leader of men. We're going oftentimes the defensive side of the ball. We'll see. They could break precedent. That's not locked in, but that's always kind of been what they're looking for. Art Rooney, actually the one running this entire one, a part of the one with Mike Tomlin, but now he's fully running this search. Dianna, you're the greatest. I see you on the phone already. Get back to the phones. You're the best.
Awesome.
And I will talk with you.
I'm sure I'll see you in an hour. Bye.
We'll be talking to you. Dianna always brings the goods when the breaking news happens, but you know who else brings the goods? That's our beat reporters across the country. Nobody better at covering the NFL than this group here at The Athletic. We're going to go through the number one seeds. What do the Seahawks and the Broncos need to do to make sure that home field advantage was worth it? We'll go inside those buildings next on Scoop City. All right, starting our Thursday road trip. Well, we don't even need to pull the car out of the garage. Maybe we should, or else we'll pass out due to fumes if we do start it. Nick Kosmider joins us, my good buddy here. Just saw him down at the Broncos facility yesterday as we were covering open locker room before the Broncos' massive showdown against the Buffalo Bills, a rematch of last season's postseason game that took place in Buffalo. This one in Denver because of the wild card. I will say this. It's the 20th rematch since 2000, Nick, where teams have played each other in consecutive seasons, and 13 of the previous 19, the same team won both. Broncos fans don't want to hear that, but there could be an X factor in this. It could be one Mr. Sean Payton. A lot of people believe that there is a coaching advantage with the way Sean operates, maybe particularly in postseason play. He has a chance and a run with the number one seed to do something kind of special. Where do you think Sean Payton fits into the mix of what we're going to see on Saturday afternoon in Denver?
Well, that's the funny thing, James. Sometimes these statistics can collide because Sean Payton has never lost a playoff game after having a bye the previous week. 3-0 in the divisional round and 1-0, obviously, in the Super Bowl in 2009. And having won that Super Bowl 16 years ago, that puts him in position to do something no other coach in the NFL history has done, which is win a Super Bowl with two different franchises. Don Shula won the NFL championship with the Baltimore Colts, but then lost Super Bowl III famously to the AFL's New York Jets and Joe Namath before winning two Super Bowls with the Dolphins. So in the Super Bowl era, Sean Payton has a chance with three more wins to do something no other coach has done. And he's also has a chance to win two Super Bowls 16 years apart. Longest gap any other coach has had them apart is Bill Belichick, 10 years between his third and fourth Super Bowl titles. So certainly the opportunity for history here. And I just think it is sort of a reminder of what Payton can provide in these moments, right? Obviously, no coach has a perfect playoff record. He's had his shortcomings in these situations, but with the opportunity to the extra time to prepare, having a largely rested team going into this postseason, and of course having it at home where they've only lost once in their last 14 games. There's a lot that they have behind them that I think that they're looking at and saying we can be optimistic about this.
Yeah, it's been a fun week with Sean Payton as well. A little testy, a little spicy on the podium. Also telling us all about the myths of the postseason, right, Nick? Also, the funny part is that he says they're myths. They're all the things he said at the beginning of the season they were pulling for and needed to have happen for them to make a successful run in the postseason, which is kind of hilarious. Let's talk about that first game that they had in the wild card matchup against each other last year. And it was 31-7, twice as many total yards and first downs by the Bills compared to the Denver Broncos. More than 247 yards the Bills had over the Broncos, most in playoff history in Buffalo's franchise. Now, what's the biggest difference? You're with this group every day. You were with them every day last year. Biggest difference from the Broncos team that lost that game to this one is what?
Well, I think the biggest difference is just like a belief in who they are, a sense of their belonging as a contender. I think obviously last year you had a team that went 10-7, surprised a lot of people for even being in that position, but they were the number 7 seed on the road against a very strong number 2 seed at home. It was a really tall order for Bo Nix to go in there in his first playoff game and try to get a win. And really, I thought he played okay. I mean, 13 to 22, 144 yards, had 43 yards rushing. They just did not look ready for that moment. The receivers had 4 charge drops, probably could have been closer to 5 or 6. Didn't play well. They couldn't run the football. And then a defense that had largely improved on the ground last year just really kind of fell apart against James Cook and Josh Allen in that run game, giving up 210 rushing yards. So I just think overall they have a better sense of who they are. They obviously went out and got some additions to really shore up the spine of that defense. And Talanoa Hufanga, who's been excellent, a second team All-Pro this season. Dre Greenlaw has obviously been up and down with injuries, but when he's been in there, has really given them an edge, and he's expected to return on Saturday. So I think they're a little bit more, they've got some reinforcements personnel wise, but also just, I think after going through a season in which you win 11 games in a row, you do it in a fashion in many weeks where you're having to overcome a lot of different adversity, and then just having again the home crowd laying out this vision that we wanted to have this game at home, and then now having it. I just think they're in a better place in terms of who they are and what they can accomplish.
Yeah, and Bo's been outstanding at home. Right, that's one of the things that he's been great with. Obviously, he's won a lot of games in his first 2 years, right up there with the tops in the ever through their first 2 seasons. He's never faced a top 3 pass defense in his career. And this is the number 1 passing defense in the NFL. You could say a lot of teams just don't throw, though, because the run side of it has been suspect for Buffalo. But they only allow 16.3 completions per game, a little more than 159 yards per game. If Denver can't run the football, and we'll see if they can. The Bills had a lot of issues against it. I don't know why Liam Cohen didn't run the football more, but had a lot of issues against it with Jacksonville and motions and making those guys move. What do you see happening with Bo if RJ Harvey and Jaleel McLaughlin can't run the football and it's put on his shoulders against this secondary? Can he still find a way to put points on the board against Josh Allen and Buffalo?
Yeah, and that's where I think hope that some of the extra time that you've really had to dig in, because like Sean Payton, when we talked to him on Friday, said obviously they at that point did not know who their opponent was going to be, that there was still 4 different teams that it could potentially be, but we'd be foolish not to think that they had already started digging in really hard on Buffalo. Just based on kind of the opportunity that they had to win in Jacksonville. They had just seen the Chargers. That's a division opponent, so they would have already had a head start there. So I think this is a situation where they have really gone hard over the last couple of weeks looking at this Bills defense. Sean Payton talked about it the other day of what they do so well in disguising coverage. It's going to be a huge challenge. I think one of the things that they're going to do with Bo Nix is really try to move the pocket. That's something that he kind of has as an edge that we maybe didn't see a lot with what Jacksonville did with Trevor Lawrence, even though they're capable of doing that. I think kind of get out of the pocket and allow yourself to get a better read of the picture of what they're trying to do. And then I think obviously Bo Nix's scrambling ability is going to be a huge factor in this game. We've seen it the last 2 weeks against the Chiefs and Chargers in games the Broncos had to win to keep their hopes of the number 1 seed alive. He started becoming more of a threat with his legs, kind of like what we saw during his rookie year. And so I think those are going to be some of the ways that they supplement what they do offensively. But you're right. They are a tough defense to crack in the secondary. Really hard to pick up some big plays against. Obviously, the Broncos had the big touchdown throw on their opening drive in the wild card game and then didn't reach the end zone again. So it's certainly a challenge. And I think having had the experience, though, of playing it in the postseason, that's another thing that they can draw on.
Postseason experience doesn't matter. Myth. I will. I'll ask you, and you're right, because you're right about Bo too, because I don't think anybody has more attempts and yards on the move in the NFL than Bo Nix. On the other side of the ball, we know that there is pretty much the X factor of the entire postseason in Josh Allen. And so many teams I talk to, Nick, talk about the second play, breaks down. He's unbelievable with his legs or with his arm and making plays. But what we saw him do against Jacksonville was he was very accurate, very quick with the football, very precise. A lot of people I've talked to said it's one of the best games he's played from the pocket, just from a quarterback standpoint. If he starts doing that, I think that makes him even more dangerous. How does this group up front, my first part of the question is, get after him? Because we know that on the edge, they're very quick, and on the interior, they win their one-on-ones regularly as well. How important is hitting him, getting to him quick, or do you cage him? And then the other part is you have the defensive player of the year that plays corner, and they don't have very much of an offense outside the numbers. How do you allow Pat Surtain to be part of what you're defending and be an impact player as one of the best defensive players in football?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think they will probably end up moving him around a little bit because of the fact that I think with their receiving core, you're going to trust some of your other guys, to guard Shakir, Brandon Cooks, whoever else it is that they have out there, with Riley Moss, with Jaquan McMillan, with Jahdae Barron, to where you're letting Pat Surtain in key matchup situations potentially even cover a Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox when they think that situation calls for that. I think Vance Joseph is going to be creative in terms of how he moves him around, because you're right, Josh Allen doesn't depend on any one receiver. So if you're just like letting Pat Surtain be outside and lock down, whether it's Shakir or whoever else is out there, that's not really necessarily, a huge net gain for you because of the way that Josh Allen distributes it. Not 9 different receivers, I think, caught passes in the game against the Jaguars. You're right about what he did against Jacksonville. I thought getting rid of the ball quickly. I mean, I think that's the one way that you try to beat this defense. But that's still going to put you into third down situations. And so as long as the Broncos, I think, can make big gains against the run, I don't see them having anywhere near as porous a performance against the run as they did down in Buffalo last year. This is the number 2 run defense in the league this year. We obviously just saw what Jacksonville's number 1 run defense was able to do against Buffalo. So I think if you can do that, you can limit some of that. Even if you're giving up some of these quick passes that Josh Allen had, you're still going to be, I think, in enough third downs to where that's when, Vance Joseph's ability, when you talk about 18 different guys on this roster who have contributed to their sack total, he's going to find a way to get a free rusher. And then it's, can you bring him down, or can you slow him down long enough for the second or third guy to get there? Because talking to these guys in the locker room, they know that's what it takes to ultimately bring him down.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love what you bring me in that locker room. I love it. I was in there yesterday talking to Pat, and it did seem kind of like, he was like, their tight ends are so good, and Kincaid and Knox. And then I got the sense where I don't know how much he's going to actually be on them. I talked to a defensive coach that knows a little bit about Pat from another team and was just kind of like, I would just have him lock down that one outside and then put all your resources to the other portions of it. That might be what you do. He may not get a whole lot of targets, but it might be able to change what VJ does. We'll see. Nick, I'll see you up there in that spread at the press box at Mile High. I mean, it's always good every year, by the way. And in the playoffs,
and it's gotten a lot better, man. Last couple of years.
Do. Oh, it's prime rib, station, everything. It's going to be great. I'll see you up there on Saturday, buddy.
All right, James. Thanks a lot, buddy.
All right, the other side of this rematch that was in the wild card round a season ago between the Bills and the Broncos. Now for the Bills side of things, Joe Buscaglia joins us. And Joe, you were there in Jacksonville. I was just watching on TV, but I could feel how physical that game was. And now they have to go across the country to Elevation, play a team that's heavily rested on a shorter week. Vibe in the locker room? Are we sore? How did we manage this week with everything that I just mentioned so they can be as fresh as possible against Denver?
Oh, they're definitely sore. I mean, they did get 2 torn ACLs to their wide receiver room in that wild card round, which is not exactly great considering their wide receiver room has been a constant topic of conversation here. And one of those 2 was Tyrell Shavers, who carved out a really nice role for them, not only as a guy who takes a bunch of snaps, but as their best run blocking receiver, which is infinitely helped those outside runs that we see them run a ton. That will definitely be a loss to them. So in terms of getting through the week, the one you want to keep an eye on above all else is just because who he is, and that's Josh Allen, because it looked like on the one touchdown, the knee really got bent in a different way than it should have. But from everything that I saw from him during this week of practice, it seems like a guy who is ready to go, and as well as he could be at this point. And just watching him throughout the years, I never get the sense that he is going to let something other than a significant injury hinder him in any sort of way. Like I think back to when they played the Buccaneers, I think it was in 2021, where it was an overtime game that they ultimately lost, but it was a catalyst to them going on a run that year. I remember him making a massive run through the middle of the defense and then going out right before the goal line and messing up his foot pretty good, to the point where he was in a walking boot after the game. Not only did he finish the rest of that game still running like crazy, but played the next week. So there's just nothing about Josh Allen that makes me think that he is going to let anything, especially in the playoffs, keep him from being his 100% self.
Yeah, and that's the sense I get being in this Broncos locker room this week when I talk to players, is we are expecting Josh Allen, period. That's the guy we're looking for. And you mentioned those injuries at the ACL with Shavers and with Gabe Davis. So many of these top quarterbacks, Joe, and you know this, are about trust, and they throw the ball to the guys that they really, really trust. We saw as the season went on the trust he had in Shavers. We've always known the trust he's had in Gabe Davis. The other guy that I think is a linchpin to this game is a guy that he trusts in the slot in Khalil Shakir. I mean, he goes 12 for 12 this past week for 82 yards. There's a really good slot corner in Jaquan McMillan here in Denver. That battle, to me, do you see that being something that we should keep our eye on between those two? Because that's also putting the football somewhere else other than anywhere near Patrick Surtain.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, that plus I am very compelled to see what the Broncos decide to do if they decide to have Surtain travel with Brandon Cooks, which would be my guess, because, you know, the opposite to that would be Keon Coleman based on who they have left. So Shakir and Cooks are pretty much the main two right now for the Bills in being able to open things up from a wide receiver perspective. But I will say this, Dalton Kincaid could have a sneakier big role heading into this game, just because it's the war of attrition at this point. Like you only have so many bodies. Like they might get Curtis Samuel back from IR, but even still, he hasn't played since week 11, I think. And McCole Hardman maybe is their call up. Maybe Christian Wilkerson, something. These are guys that have not taken a ton of snaps and not been targeted a ton by Josh Allen in the regular season. So to me, Kincaid is kind of like an outlier here, to where, you know, you have this Shakir matchup that we're talking about, which I do think he can have some degree of success in that matchup, just because of where they target him, how often they target him. But I just think, too, where did they have their best matchup advantage in terms of when they drop back to pass? And Kincaid just continues to come to my mind, because as good as the Broncos defense has been, I do wonder if there's some opportunity to take advantage of those linebackers in coverage if they get their run game going, and Kincaid would be the number one guy to do it. And then even their safety lock, I think there could be some potential to take advantage of there. So Kincaid is one I certainly have my eye on coming into this game, in addition to their run game, which I think the Bills are going to have a spirited effort to try and get this thing right back to where it was, rather than where it was last week.
Yeah, that's a great point. Before I get to that, I had a casual conversation with Patrick Surtain yesterday, who kind of just brought up, like, Dalton Kincaid's the truth, man. Like, he kind of just brought it up himself about what he thinks. And I also talked to McMillan. So his focus was this, essentially, like, off the line of scrimmage, he thinks the world of what Shakir can do. He's got to be right there about his releases right off the line. But he's like, my number one thing, he told me, was I have to tackle. Like, I have to tackle well, because Shakir is so good breaking tackles and after the catch, and they know they don't want those kind of chunk plays to happen. With as good as their pass rush is, the more times Josh has to drop back, the better for them. You mentioned the run game. They went against the number one rush defense in football in Jacksonville. Okay, you won that game. You now go against the number 2 rush defense in football in Denver. What didn't work against Jacksonville with this run game with James Cook that you think that they saw and might change to find some success against this Denver run game?
You know, that is the exact right question, because I have been trying to figure that out this entire week. And to the fact where I was a couple minutes late here because I was talking to a couple of the offensive linemen to try and
go to work, Joe. Work
I'm
for
trying.
Us here.
I'm trying. I'm doing my my one, however many beat reporters we have here, 132nd, we'll say. To me, going back and watching the Jaguars tape, and then going back and watching what the Bills did against the Broncos last year in the playoffs, from a run perspective, because Cook, I think, had 79 yards in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken, in that one. It was a definite overmatching.
Yeah.
Yes. The Jaguars game to me seemed more like they did away with the run game more quickly than we've seen from them in the past, because for the first time in quite some time, the pass game was how they were buttering their bread throughout the game. Now, credit to the Jaguars, because they were shedding some blocks and they were making some of the Bills' really good offensive linemen throughout the year kind of had some bad reps on tape that maybe dissuaded them from going that route. But they did have a pop play on a pitch to the left that went for 11 yards. There was another play that looked well blocked. Same thing, pitch to the left. Cook decided to try and reverse field because it was wide open, and then Trayvon Walker stops him for a 0-yard gain. I think that was this close. It just seemed like they were this close the entire time to popping one. And then by the time they got to the fourth quarter, because Josh Allen was such in a groove, James Cook only carried the ball twice in the fourth quarter on both of their series. So that's not to say that the Jaguars didn't do some good things, because they definitely stopped them. And as Joe Brady has called it, force them into some bloody runs, which is, these short yardage where it's just like physicality the whole way. But I do think that there was more meat on the bone than what meets the eyes with the statistics. And I would not be surprised if the Bills try to go the physical route and try to establish themselves on the ground to take some of the pressure off of that passing game, because the receiver room is so banged up, and try to build themselves into a two-dimensional play action style attack in this one. That would be my guess as to where their priorities lie going into this one.
It makes sense. It certainly does. All right. Before we go, Denver, they haven't run the football very well, but guess what? Buffalo hasn't defended the run very well through the course of this year. There's a guy on that defensive front that everybody in Denver is kind of curious. Is Ed Oliver going to play? That short area quickness in the middle of the field can change a lot of what Denver wants to do with their offensive line, Joe. Like, it's funny, I was talking to Mike McGlinchey yesterday, who said, I haven't even watched a whole lot of film with Ed as part of their D-line because he's been out for so long. Like, I haven't really gotten to that part, and I've watched a lot. Can he go? And if he does, how different is that group up front?
Yeah, to Mike McGlinchey's point, he's played in 3 games this year, and one of them he was injured pretty quickly in that Panthers game. The Bills are being coy about it, as you would expect this time of year. Yeah. I asked Sean McDermott today on Thursday, how did Ed Oliver come through in his first physical practice, and he's like, we saw some good things, and just kind of left it at that. Nothing, didn't expound on it one bit after that. If it is my guess right here, and I'm not reporting this, if it is my guess, based on what I have seen at practice and just kind of some senses that I get and the vibes that I get from the building, my guess is that Ed Oliver goes this week, and it would be a humongous addition to what they're trying to do, because not only is he an excellent player, and I wouldn't expect him to get full complement of snaps. If he does, that would be remarkable in his first game back, let alone practicing for the first time since October this week. But if he can give them some snaps, specifically on third down, some pass rushing snaps, that is a humongous thing for them. And not only that, it helps shift Daquan Jones, who has had a really nice season and, played a really good game against the Jaguars. He's been playing out of position basically the entire time Ed Oliver has been away. He's been starting next to Deon Walker. Deon Walker's been the 1 technique. Daquan Jones has been the 3. Daquan Jones is a 1 technique in the Bills system, but he's just kind of adapted and gotten through it. So because Ed Oliver might come back, it might shift Daquan Jones into his more natural position to where it could shift this entire thing. And I've really got my eyes on that interior of the Bills pass rush, those guys specifically, against the Broncos interior offensive line, because Forsythe has been really nice for them in, helping them out, get through the reps without Wattenberg. And, Ben Powers just got back. And I think that could be a couple of areas where those guys could attack. And Sean McDermott has always said the fastest point A to point B to get to the passer is with the interior. That's why they invest so heavily into it. And if they have their success and get Bo Nix off his spot and force him into some errant passes, I think that's going to be the group that does it.
Oh, unbelievable. Great stuff. You always forget when somebody goes down, it's not like you just lose that position a lot of times. It's like somebody's got to slide over. My tackle has to move to the other side, or my guard goes to tackle, or same thing on the D-line. It oftentimes makes you weaker at two spots sometimes. Don't tell Ed Oliver that the stock show's in town here in Denver, because I want him focused on the game and not all of the action that's happening down the road there at the stock show this weekend. Joe, see you here in Denver, man. Very soon. Looking forward to see you person and not virtually.
Sounds good, my man. Thanks for having me as always.
All right, man. All right, moving on our Thursday Scoop City postseason edition of our road trip. Michael Sean Dugard joins us as we stick with the number 1 seeds. They rested just like Denver as they now await a very familiar foe in the 49ers who they played in Week 18. We'll get to that, Mike, but you wrote this great piece, and everybody go to The Athletic and please read this on Sam Darnold. There's so many different aspects of playing quarterback. We know physically he can do it. The draft part of it shows us that, right, Mike? He can do things on a football field. Very talented quarterbacks can do. But the other parts of it, the mental side of it, the mental determination in that sense, all the other mental aspects of the game you went into here, and they're only heightened in the postseason. One of the biggest questions are, can we trust Sam Darnold in the postseason? Your reporting shows us what?
Yeah, the Seahawks feel very confident that they can because of how they've approached this. Sam, that seeing ghosts game. We go back to the game was like, I'm seeing ghosts, right? That's one of, I believe, 3 times that he has had 4 interceptions and accounted for no turnovers, right? I think he's the only quarterback who's done that many times since 2000, right? So he's got a history of basically imploding, right? Okay, well, how do you get a guy to not see ghosts? Well, it reminds me of the movie Inception. That's kind of what I pitched when I was talking about, when I wrote that story, this is what I pitched to my editor. I was telling him about, it's like that scene in Inception where they're explaining the concept of the movie. And he says, all right, don't think about elephants. Well, what's the guy immediately thinking about? Elephants, right? And he knows that I'm thinking about elephants because you told me not to think about elephants, right? Quarterbacks are the same thing. Drew Lock and I, Drew Lock's the backup quarterback. Drew and I were talking about that this week. If you get the play call and you're like, all right, spider 2 wide banana. All right, let's protect the ball here. All right, well, what are you now thinking about if you're the quarterback, like protecting the ball, as opposed to just executing spider 2 wide banana or whatever the play call is. And Sam he comes off as a guy who would rather you just let him be him. Drew had mentioned that to me, and Mike McDonald even told me this week, they do that intentionally. They coach him up to just be him. They don't go out and say, don't throw picks. That doesn't work. Because what's he going to be thinking about once you say that? Throwing picks, and I think it really, although Sam has thrown a lot of interceptions this year, what stands out is what he's done after that. After he threw 4 against the Rams in week 11, what did he do? He led them from the 1-yard line in the field goal range for a shot to win it. Or he threw 2 more in week 16 against the Rams. What did he do after that? Well, he walked them down in overtime through the game-tying touchdown and then a 2-point conversion to win it. So I think that's part of why the Seahawks feel so confident that Sam will just be Sam. It's the psychology of it, it's just going out here and not telling him whether or not to think about elephants, basically.
Yeah, I was thinking of Inception, but I also was thinking of Ray Stantz, a.k.a. Dan Aykroyd, on top of that building going, clear your brains, don't think of anything. And then the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in Ghostbusters comes up, and he just couldn't not think of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And I'll say this, too. I host this show with Steve Smith Sr., and Steve has always told me, specifically with receivers, when things don't go well, drop, thing like that, his eyes immediately go to the receiver on what is you doing the next play, the next series, how do you mentally kind of bounce back from anything that goes against you on a football field. And quarterback, it's always probably magnified than other parts of it. Real quick before we get to this game, the other player in all of that is Clint Kubiak, and the man who runs this offense. I think what we know about Clint as a nation here of football fans, Mike, is like, obviously, his dad's a Super Bowl winning coach, and Gary Kubiak, Mike Shanahan have created this kind of system that so many use. He's a master of that. He's a great play caller, and it kind of ends there. But he's a head coaching kind of candidate here in this cycle. You've been around him on a daily basis, and you've seen him on a practice field. What other traits are there about why teams are interested in Clint Kubiak, and do you think he is a good head coaching candidate?
Yeah, I think as far as being a good head coaching candidate, it's hard to know until the guy gets in the chair because there's just so many things that they're going to experience for the first time. But where I think that Clint maybe has the upper hand on some of these other first-time guys who are interviewing for jobs in this cycle is that he does have his dad, and he and his dad are close. That if he does have to experience just the little things about being a coach, for the first time, like, all right, Dad, how do I handle this? My practice structure with this, or resting veterans in week 13, or how we want to do this. He's got that kind of built-in, helper there. And I know Gary will help him do that. Whereas other guys will just, Mike McDonald hired Leslie Frazier, for instance. That's not the same. Leslie ain't Mike's dad, right? Like it's just a different relationship there to have someone walk you through that. And, I also, on top of that, I asked guys about Clint Kubiak this week on and off the record. Cooper Kupp, when I asked him whether Clint would be a great head coach, he's like, wait a minute, man, you want me to advocate up here on the podium for him to go?
No.
Yeah, he was like, I don't want to do that. But then, he's saying, Clint's praises. And I asked some other guys, they were just like, they didn't know how to put it into words. They were like, it doesn't make sense because they're like, I'll run through a wall for him, but he's not the traditional run through a wall for you guy like a Pete Carroll or even a Dan Campbell currently. Like Clint may not say more than 6 words, but those 6 words are enough to get you to run through that wall. And I didn't really know he was that type of guy until I was talking to guys this week, most of them off the record, because they were like, Cooper, they're like, I don't want just all this out there. I don't want anyone to take my coach. Gray Zabel, their star rookie guard, the same thing at the podium. He was like, yeah, man, Clint's the worst coach ever. I don't think anyone should hire him, because they don't want this guy to go. They'll be happy for him if he does. But I think he finds just a different way to get guys to believe in being the best version of themselves. I think Sam, as we just talked about, is maybe the best example, but that extends down to wide receiver 5 and running back 3, and you feel the backup left tackle, Kubiak just has this subtle way of just like saying few words, but those words get you to believe in your job, know what your job is, and trust that he gave you the answers to the test. So on Sunday, you can just go do your job to the best of your ability. And that's all you could ever want in a head coach, no matter your special teams background, offensive background, or defensive background.
I don't know. This is a pretty good endorsement I think you gave him. I did the same thing as you because I didn't really see it. And I covered Gary for a long time. In Houston, I covered him when I was a beat reporter there. And I just kind of asked around going, does Clinton? And he was like, no, he's got a little bit of that that Gary has to him as well. And there's that similarity that kind of plays in that little dick to him, like you got a chance to kind of play, push and prod a little bit the way Gary's really good at. And I think Clint does the same thing with his offense and the way that they played so physical in week 18. I mean, I don't think you see that happen to the Niners a whole lot where they just get out physicaled in a game. Do you see this playing out the same way as week 18 played, Mike? And also the run game was a big part of that. I think they went for 171 off of 33, I think it was. What's changed in the run game? And is that physicality going to stay there? Because that usually doesn't happen against San Francisco.
Yeah, I think there was a unique factor there in which the Niners, I don't believe, even had a full speed practice going into that. They were just beat up, had a few night games in a row. The Niners are going to practice actually, full speed. And so I think that'll help them not come out flat on both sides of the ball like they did. But the physicality was a huge part of it, and it was no accident. There was so much on the line. It was fun hearing from guys that week. They were like, Mike, we want to win the division. We want to win the 1 seed. That's great. But we also just want to beat them because they beat us. That was a revenge game for them. They didn't like that in week 1. They came in there and beat them on this dramatic fashion. They were just pissed. So all right, we owe you for week 1 more than anything else. And if we get the 1 seed and win a division as a consequence of that, great. Pull out the cigars. So I'll be very curious to see if they can find that same kind of added motivation this week, because now you just beat them. Now the roles are reversed. You came into their house on national TV for the division, beat up on them in a particular way that we don't see, as you mentioned, and then smoke cigars in their locker room. All right, now do you still have that hunger in you? I would imagine the answer is yes, and that's why you do things like draft a fullback in the offseason. That's why you do things like be one of the best 12 personnel offenses in the league. You run a lot of 21 personnel. That stuff is so that in January, when you get under center and you got a fullback in there, the other team has to strap their pads on for 60 minutes and deal with that, to quote the great East Oakland orator Marshawn Lynch, over and over and over and over and over again, right? That's why he said it that way, because that's real. No one wants to to deal with that. Right. And so I think the Seahawks built their offense that way and struggled to run the ball for most of the year, knowing that, hey, in December and January it's going to come together. And you're correct. They went for 170, Ken Walker and Jack Charbonnet did. That was their third straight game going at least for 130 together. In the last 3 games, they've averaged 5.5 yards per carry and 8 first down runs per game in the last 3. So they've hit their stride. And that's important because that physicality is how they would win this game.
Yeah, that's the Kubiak marathon of thinking, honestly, the way they think of a season. I remember Gary being that way back in the day as well, and the way a season continues to play out. We know, speaking of running backs, that Christian McCaffrey is the focal point of what San Francisco does. He's the do-it-all weapon, and George Kittle going down probably even emphasizes that even further. I need you to take me into the building about the big nickel 3 that they play, and Nick Kosmider and kind of the way he plays I don't know what he doesn't play. Actually, maybe you'd be better at it than me in terms of, is he a Christian McCaffrey eraser? And what did Mike McDonald's experience with Kyle Hamilton play into how we've seen this happen very quickly about a guy that we all should be watching when they play Saturday night?
Yeah, Nick Kosmider, their second-round pick at South Carolina, is basically like a skeleton key that just unlocks every aspect of the defense. You know, if you go out there and with 11 personnel, all right, we got Nick. You know, he's fast enough to guard your third receiver, whether that's Justin Jefferson, who he was able to guard against Minnesota, or he can run down the field against Houston's Jalen Noel, who runs a 4-3. Just like Nick does. You know, you come out in 12 personnel. All right, well, Nick can guard your other tight end, your number 2 guy, or he can guard Kittle, which he did a lot in the first meeting, in the Week 18 meeting. And if you come in 13 personnel, like the Rams like to do a lot of, all right, cool. Nick can stop the run because he's strong as hell. You know, he can get in the box and be a real pass rusher, be a real edge setter. So he can just do a little bit of everything. So they don't have to change personnels and do all this subbing. And it really probably makes their practice more efficient too. You know, you don't have to say, all right, here's our nickel guys. All right, come in. All right, base. You know, you've seen how practice works. They shout out all the personnels, and after, you know, dime. You know, a guy usually comes on with 10 fingers up. I ain't got to do none of that. You got Nick Kosmider. Everybody stays on the field, and we can stop whatever you do, and we can do it really well at a high level. And Nick's the key. Kyle Hamilton gave them some of that as well, but I think his coverage skill set is a little different because Nick's a lot faster, whereas Kyle's a little bit rangier, you know, true free safety in that way. We saw that at Notre Dame. So Mike's experience, I think, helped there, but also it was Mike's his secret sauce, I think, is he just sees you and sees what you do well and is like, all right, let's try to maximize that in every possible way. I don't care what you can't do. I care about what you do really well. I don't put you in position to do that. And with Nick, it just happens to be so many different things, and it allows them to dictate terms on defense in a league right now where the offense usually is the last one holding the pen before the snap.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. So many teams around the league are trying this right now, but I don't think they have this player. They just don't. In a lot of these other places that are playing this kind of big nickel, as it's called, across the league, and it's really fun to watch the Seattle defense play the way they play. Real quick, Mike, you have a prediction or just something you have your eye on maybe for Saturday night that would determine this game outside of, I think Nick's a big one, but outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, Sam protecting the ball, I do think that is important. You know, he did lead the league in turnovers. He was second in turnover rate, tied with Brock Purdy, though, for what that's worth. So both these quarterbacks need to protect the ball. The difference is we've seen Brock play in a ton of big playoff games at this point, and he usually plays like himself. You know, he doesn't have to go higher, doesn't have to be worse. Just he's the Brock we see in the regular season, in the postseason. We haven't yet seen that from Sam. You know, I think he's the only quarterback in the NFC side of the bracket who now hasn't won a playoff game, right? So we need to see that part of it from him. We need to see him just be Sam. And the other part is whether the Seahawks can get explosives from someone other than Jackson Smith and Jigba, you know, because quietly Seattle's offense has not played well in this matchup. They played okay. You know, they scored 13 points in week 1. And then 13 points in week 18, right? And that's with a banged up 49ers defense. No Fred. D. Winters got hurt in the last game. No Nick Bosa. No Michael Williams. It would take us a lot longer on this show to rattle off all the guys that have gotten hurt for the 49ers this season. My goodness. So even without that, though, they only scored 13 points, right? So can you score more than that? Can someone other than Jackson Smith and Jigba have more than 40 yards receiving, you know, which wasn't the case in week 18. So as good as the offense is, Robert Saleh is as good a defensive coordinator as there is, in the NFL. Clint Kubiak has interviewed, I believe, for 6 of the 9 openings, and that's just because he can't interview for the Steelers one yet. Robert Saleh is just as highly coveted, if not more, from his side of the ball. So that headset matchup, I think, will decide this game really, because Robert Saleh has done a great job kind of making something out of little. I don't want to say something out of nothing, but just something out of being an undermanned unit. He's done a great job.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Enjoy the game. I know the atmosphere will be just unbelievable. I know you get down there early. Enjoy the atmosphere. Enjoy what happens around the stadium before it goes, and enjoy Moana before Saturday rolls around.
Yeah, I'll be at a baby shower the day of the game at like 1 o'clock. Yeah. I'm trying to text my friend now. Like, I know the dad really well. I'm like, hey man, can we get the Bills game like on at the baby shower?
Yeah,
like what's going on here?
But
and then
what's
I'll
going to
shoot over to
happen,
the
man.
stadium.
You're going to get asked 1,000 questions at that baby shower about the game that night by every dad that is at that baby shower.
You know what happened? Actually, last week I got dragged to. That's how you know I'm a parent. I got dragged to a 4-year-old's birthday party last Saturday night, and I was like, hey, can we get the Packers game on in here? And thankfully, the dad played in the NFL for a little bit. So he was like, yeah, that's fine. Let's do this. So, but yes, it was the same thing. It was like, Mike, who do we play if the Bears win, what happens? If the Packers win, what happens? Can we beat them? What is the 40? It was just all these questions for half the game. I love it, though, that you can feel the buzz in the city. And those are some examples of it.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Enjoy it. Hopefully it keeps rolling there. All right, moving on for our Thursday road trip on Scoop City, the other side of this matchup and the 49ers. Vic Tafer joins us. Vic, before we get to this matchup, you do have to take me inside that locker room at Lincoln Financial Field. I mean, this was I don't know if I want to say a miracle. I think that's what Silver used, but an unbelievable upset. You lose Kittle, you got the tequila. Take me in that room and what that experience was like.
Yeah, as the game was going on, the Eagles kept letting them hang around. You kept wondering, are they going to actually, blow this? And the fans, you can sense the fans are, having a good time. It's a playoff game. They're loud, but you can sense the dread coming to like, are we actually going to blow this? And it kind of just this weird feeling over the whole place. And when they scored, the place got really quiet, and the locker room clearly was just a celebration. Just people. I will say this: there wasn't much surprise. I wouldn't say the Niners were shocked they pulled it off. Definitely, it's a veteran bunch, very confident. Even if they lost Kittle, they've lost. Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, all these injuries all year long, but still a resolve and kind of a confidence that these rookies have learned quickly, and kind of it's they kind of believe it's not a big deal, that they just win games and on to the next.
Yeah, they are battle tested. That's probably a term that's only used in sports. I don't say it very often in my personal life, but that's essentially what they are. They're pretty battle tested in a sense. Here's an impossible question for you, Vic. Better coaching job this year: Kyle Shanahan, Robert Saleh?
That's a good question. I'd probably go Shanahan because he's kind of has the head coach.
Yeah.
He has the whole room. He's got, he obviously is focused on the offense, but clearly he's keeping these guys motivated, keeping them in believing and going forward. I think look at Mac Jones came in, a guy who wasn't really a coveted quarterback in the offseason, and took over for 8 games, and kind of a big reason why they are where they are now, as far as he won 5 of those games, and just the offense doesn't miss a beat. I mean, they keep having guys step up. I mean, last week was Demarcus Robinson, a guy we haven't heard much from all year long, making big plays. So there's a lot of confidence in Kyle as a play caller. He has confidence in the guys that can step up, who haven't been playing much and make plays. So it's just it's a great atmosphere. Everyone kind of is on board, and there's a lot of belief in each other, both coaches and players.
Yeah, and the linchpin to that, you could say it's Brock Purdy, but for the course of the season, it's been Christian McCaffrey, right? And the way that they've used him in every way imaginable. I don't know if I've ever seen, you've seen a lot more football than me, Vic. I don't know if I've ever seen a better running back in terms of route running, catching the football, really more or less just an offensive weapon, 4th all time in postseason scrimmage yards per game at over 118 per game. Are there different ways still, or different concepts that Kyle can create, lean on, to get Christian the ball against this Seahawks defense that is so good, that knows this team so well, and knows he's getting the football?
Yeah, he's definitely pulling out all the stops as far as motion, where he puts in packages, and the play, the reverse pass Juwan Jennings made, great pass, great call, but what a catch! I mean, no one's kind of we're kind of looking, we're looking past the catch a little bit. The guy makes over the head catch, and it's a running back. We kind of take it for granted he's going to make these plays, but it's funny because we talk about all the injuries all year long, and back in training camp, he was the guy everyone was worried about. Like, McCaffrey's not going to hold up, he's not going to. Now here he is. Yeah. He started every game. He has 400 touches. He's getting stronger as the year goes on. So I just think if you look at this weekend, I think they have to give him the ball. Like if they give him 25, 30 touches, they have a good chance to pull this off.
How about adding a compliment to him? You mentioned Demarcus Robinson. I've talked to Stafford in the past about Robinson. I've talked to Mahomes in the past about Robinson. Like, hey, he has some ability to make some big plays for you. You've seen it with this group. But you see Trent Williams get back and play that game against Philly, and that's massive. But then I think you and I have talked about Ricky Pearsall. We're always kind of wondering. He's still, with all the games he's missed, I think he's played, Vic, 9 of 17 games, and he's still like their leader as a deep threat in terms of yards and catches. Now, is he going to come back? Because I do think that changes this offense that is just starving for another option, another target for a defense to worry about.
Yeah, yesterday he said he's feeling better. His knee's feeling fine. I think was the word he used. He's optimistic he'll play this weekend. But he admits he won't be 100%. Like Trent Williams came back last week, probably, I'm guessing, 75% of what he is. So I think Ricky's the same boat. Like he can come in, he can beat man-to-man coverage, that helps him out a little bit. But he's not going to be making dynamic plays or kind of these great cuts. Okay. And I think it'll be a limited role for him. But still, a guy who make defenses respect what he can do and gives Brock another option. So it'll definitely be a big comeback for the team this week if he came back.
Yeah, for sure. All right, last one on the offense I have for you is, and there's people when all pro voting comes out, Vic, they're always like, can we please lose the fullback position? Can we please just get rid of it, right? But there is a man in that building that plays the fullback spot that does everything. And what he is using, these different types of motions, and you see him run one way and then come back the other, and the ball is snapped, and all the different ways they use Kyle Juszczyk. It's like he's vital to this offense, even more so with the loss of Kittle and the loss of, so many other guys as parts of this offense. We've never seen Brandon Ayuk. Like, how really vital is he, not just on the field, give me that, but also like in how this team operates and has gotten through this season?
Yeah, I think maybe part of it is he's more than a fullback. That word doesn't really do him justice as far as you mentioned the roles he plays and on the line of scrimmage in motion. He's blocking guys. He's out. Last week when George went down, he had like 4 catches, I think, last week. It was kind of, he stepped up. So another guy who we've talked about how they're battle tested, just a guy who's been here forever and just knows a big part of the culture, the winning culture. He definitely is good with young players and kind of an example. He hasn't missed a game all year. Broke a rib, I think, a month and a half ago and didn't miss a game. So just shows you the toughness that he has, and just kind of a guy who, he's there. He's reliable, like a lot of these veteran guys, and they kind of know, hey, we're in there for the long haul, and we'll get this done.
Yeah, he's got like fingers that'll never look the same again, but he's still out there just dominating the way he is. In terms of the health of these guys, we always focus on the Niners with that. You've seen Fred Warner on a football field. I mean, people didn't think they'd be seeing that or saying that right now if they beat the Philadelphia Eagles. What have you seen from Fred Warner, and is there an actual chance he plays, Vic?
It's a unique thing where a team's, round 2 of the playoffs, and you're in there on a Wednesday, and the key guy talking is a guy who's on, IR, he's in the locker room talking to reporters. He's come. It's a big deal. He's going to practice. Everyone's on, but it's a buzz. Players are buzzing. Media's buzzing, and it's just a weird thing where a guy who may not play is such a huge central, figure, and he looked. I mean, it's no pads, but he's running around, he's jumping, he's obviously yelling, he's spirited. Guys are really fired up, so it was a nice thing to see. I don't know if he can play this week. I think the goal always was next week if they win, but he's going to try. He said don't rule him out, to take it day to day. We'll see today how he feels, but he's definitely he's up for the challenge. He definitely wants to play. He, like I said, he was flying around yesterday. I mean, I don't know what that means as far as football stuff and putting pads on, taking a hit, but he's raring to go.
That's encouraging, though. I mean, it might even give you a juice to go like, guys, if we win this, this type of player possibly back if we do win. Things didn't go great in Week 18. It felt like there was a physicality that Seattle brought to the Niners. Oftentimes, we're not sure if that continues. You see these teams play again oftentimes in the league, and that doesn't play out the same way. Do you see this game playing out differently than the way it did in Week 18?
Yeah, I think it will. I think that game, the Seahawks came in with a lot of confidence. They clearly felt we're the better team, we're the more physical team, we can push these guys around. And I think part of that was Trent Williams is not playing. He was out that game, so that's a huge factor. He's back in the mix now. And like that week, they probably threw out, I want to say 50% of the playbook, things they couldn't do without Trent. So those plays are back in. I think even though the Seahawks came out and they were definitely fired up and had a good start, the final score was 13-3. I know people say it was misleading, but the Niners hung around. I mean, they definitely had a chance to make plays at the end. It was that interception at the very end that kind of killed them. But they were in that game to the fourth quarter, even though they were kind of getting physically dominated the first half of the game. So, again, they're confident. They played this team twice. They've split. So they think they can run the ball this week and have a chance.
Okay, real quick. 50% of the plays are out of the playbook of Trent Williams, isn't it? That's not normal for a left tackle.
I think enunciate better. 15%. 15.
Okay, I was about to say, I know Trent's good, and he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but that's a limited playbook. 15. Okay, that's maybe. I have small ears, Vic. It might have been that.
No, that's all me. I have to slow down a little bit and relax and enunciate. But 15. 1-5.
1-5. There we go. All right, prediction. You got. What needs to happen for the Niners to win this game before we go?
Like I said, McCaffrey, 30 touches. Needs some turnovers in defense. I mean, Upton Stout, maybe he's played really well this year. I think maybe he comes up with a pick, but they need some big plays on both sides of the ball. I think Seattle is better. They're healthier. They're more rested. They're at home. So, every week people count the Niners out and they win. I think they'll be close. I don't know if they can pull it off, but they'll definitely be in the game in the fourth quarter.
Oh, awesome. They've just been so fun to watch, Vic. I bet it's been even better to cover. I'll be reading everything. Make sure everybody does, too, on The Athletic of what Vic's pumping out there. A lot of things he's putting out right now about George Kittle out, not just catching the football, run game impact. Go check out everything kind of Vic's got going on. Appreciate it, man. All right, we've made our stops at both number 1 seeds. How about making a stop inside the building of each of the number 2 seeds? We're going to talk to Kevin Fishbane with the Bears and Chad Graff with the Patriots coming up next on Scoop City. Welcome back to Scoop City. Our Thursday postseason road trip continues. I'm James Palmer. Kevin Fishbane joins us, and he has been on this show a ton because the Bears have been on one hell of a run, and it continues. I need you first to take me inside the city of Chicago. If I'm walking down the streets and it's, I'm going in revolving door after revolving door, what am I witnessing here in Chicago as they are now in the divisional round, Kevin?
It's a lot of Go Bears, bear down. Everybody's wearing their navy and orange. I saw a picture of a CTA bus, the public bus in Chicago with the Go Bears on the front. There are few things like this city when this team is good. And it's been a long time, obviously, since they got into the divisional round. And I mean, I've had friends reach out who aren't the biggest sports fans, aren't the biggest Bears fans, being like, where should I go watch the game Sunday? Like, everybody wants to be with each other, being a part of this thing. Because as you said, it's been this kind of magical ride, and everybody wants to see it keep going.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And the guy who leads all of it is Ben Johnson, who I remember in the early parts of the season, you and I were on here talking, Kevin. It's like, we know he's this offensive mind. We've always heard this rumor he's behind the closed door and he's just a mad scientist figuring it out. But man, have we learned a lot about Ben Johnson's personality through the course of this year. How was it received with his latest comments after the Packers, all of that stuff, and he essentially doubles down? Did that make what kind of response in the city?
I mean, I think the players love it. I think people in this city, for the most part, love it. There's always going to be, James, this little nervousness of oh yeah, that was cool, but what's going to happen when we lose the Packers in week 4 next year? And all of our friends from Wisconsin are throwing that in our faces. So I understand some trepidation, but rivalries are fun, and he's just. I think I've said this on the show before, and I say this in the most loving term. He's a maniac. He is just so competitive and driven, and I think the players take to it. This city, James, this is the type of city that's going to take to that kind of just grit, if for lack of a better word, that he's exhibiting both publicly and behind closed doors with this team. And we'd be having different conversation if some of these coin flip games flip the other way, obviously. But even still, even if they were 7-10, but they were in all these games, you just can see the foundation that he's built here. I went back and watched that video of his first day at Hallis Hall this week. when he walks in and they give him a round of applause in the front lobby and he addresses all these employees. And that was the moment I think everybody realized, like, oh, this isn't just some like nerd, in some lab concocting plays. As you said, this is like, we've all come to know, like, this guy is intense, he's energized, and he has found a way to rally this entire franchise to a place it has not been in a long time.
Yeah, I love it. Listen, Bears fans, I am part of one of the biggest rivalries in all of sports. I'm an Ohio State guy, Ohio State, Michigan. I don't care how much of a lunatic I am because I get 364 days until the next game to be that. And then, yes, I could get shot down, but enjoy the time that you have before, as Kevin pointed out, week 4 when you play the Packers or whatever it is next season. All right, let's get to this game and the X's and O's of it and what you're kind of looking for. The Bears run game had this stretch where we were just mesmerized by it, the success of it, the scheme of it, the way they use the two different sides of the offensive line. Now they're hit with an injury. Now we have a defensive line that is as talented as they come in terms of that group with the Rams. How do you see them running the football, and could they get back to that we've seen during that stretch in the middle of the year?
Boy, they would love to. I mean, that had been their bread and butter, and it's going to be really tough. I think you saw the Packers, their Packers run fits were really good on Saturday night. Just every time it seemed like a linebacker just came free and made a stop for 1 yard or no gain. One thing that we kind of, like, it's a funny dynamic, James, because it's like we laud the Bears offensive line for starting all these games together. But then you remember, these guys have started now 18 games. 3 of the 5 starters have started 18 games, including 2 guys in Jonah Jackson and Drew Dahlman who have played great football, but they were hurt last year. They missed a lot of time last year, so it's just a lot of football. And I don't know if there's some wear and tear there. I don't think anybody here would admit that, of course, but the season goes on. Like, it's hard to live up to that, to stay at that level, but they're going to try. And I think one of the things about Ben Johnson is he's really good at designing the run game. And I'll take you back. There's some funny synergy here. The Bears have not won a Sunday Night Football game since they beat the Rams in December of 2018. And it was just a very signature win for that team. And I remember that night, so much of the conversation was, how are the Bears going to contain Aaron Donald? And they had a really great plan that night where they were doing these they just did a really good job with some window dressing and some draw plays and letting him fly upfield, and then they'd hand the ball off to Jordan Howard and Tree Cohen, and it was like a big part of that
Listen to those names,
game. Yeah, remember some guys. Again, completely different teams, of course, throwing out that disclaimer, but I just was like, again, I've been thinking about that game a lot this week, and it reminds me of, like, I'm very interested to see some of the things Ben Johnson has cooked up to try to get this run game going against, as you said, maybe one of the best front fours in football.
Yeah, you use some of that aggressiveness against them at times. I mean, we're focusing on what Denver's going to do getting downhill against Josh Allen. Do the Bills use that against, the speed that they have on the edges to kind of try some different things? You always love this cat and mouse aspect of it. If we look at as good as this front is for the Rams defense, I don't want to say it's a weakness, but they're obviously not as strong at the corner spot. We know all the different skill guys that Ben Johnson has at his disposal. When you're in the room this week, have you gotten a sense that maybe the pass game is something we can lean on as a schematic advantage or a personnel advantage in this matchup?
Well, they always feel like they have a personnel advantage with their skill players, and who can blame them? When you look at DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, what Colson Loveland has done in the past 2 months, Luther Burden, to use another NFC West team, the San Francisco 49ers, when the Bears played the 49ers, the run game was just okay, and they knew they had an advantage against that secondary. Now, the difference was 49ers and Rams vastly different in terms of rushing the passer.
Very
Obviously,
much so.
They knew they were going to have time against San Francisco, and that was a game that Caleb Williams was maybe his best game all year, and they threw the ball a ton, and they had a lot of success, a lot of explosive plays. So I think that I use that example to just remind everybody that Ben Johnson loves to morph. That's like kind of the word that we hear coaches and players use a lot. They want to be different every week. So if, to your point, they'll look at this as, if we can give Caleb the time, we know our receivers are going to win these battles more likely than not. It's just giving him the time and then him putting the ball on the money, which he's been better about over the last month, but obviously he was, last in the league among qualified quarterbacks in accuracy, so, that could come up if you got guys open, you can't miss them. It's the playoffs. But yeah, that's going to be a really fascinating just dynamic in terms of how Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams get that going. And, again, it's the old Bill Belichick, right? Find the opponent's weakness and just game plan for that weakness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. You mentioned Caleb there. I kind of wanted to touch that. I won't say I didn't plan on asking you about Caleb Williams, but it wasn't actually really here in my notes. But he's been unbelievable, and you've been there for every step of the way. Tell me about Caleb Williams week 1, if you're watching him on a football field, to Caleb Williams we'll see Sunday Night Football. The biggest difference in him is what in your eyes as you've seen every single snap?
Well, he's so much more comfortable in this offense, and I think if you look at some of the explosive plays that he had 9 pass plays of 20-plus yards. Now, really 7 if you talking about air yards. But if we just go back to the 9, that's the most any Bears quarterback has had in a game this century and probably ever. The data only goes back to 2000. So I think that his comfort, guys are probably getting open in week 1. But there's just a difference of he knows where they're going to be, he knows what the play is drawn up for, and he feels so comfortable just letting it rip and hitting those guys. And the accuracy has improved, late in the season. So I think that comfortability has been, because the thing is, last year he did a really good job protecting the football too. That's been his hallmark. And the biggest thing this year is avoiding the sacks,
yes.
Obviously, but just feeling comfortable enough to let those throws rip, I think, is probably the biggest difference between September and now into January.
Okay, let's flip it over. On the other side of the ball, we know turnovers are a big part of what Chicago does. You're facing what many people believe is the MVP, and the way that they use heavy personnel, the way that I think it's awesome, the way they use their tight ends and Puka Nacua actually in their run game to help get to that next level and aid in a run game that a lot of people, if you ask around, really, really kind of love watching, kind of similar to when you see the Bears run game really, really working. What part of this Rams offense you think is the most concerning or doesn't match up as well as you'd like against this Bears defense?
Yeah, nothing's a good matchup for the Bears when the Rams have the ball. I don't think anything is, because even if you want to sit there and poke some holes in the Rams offensive line, the Bears haven't rushed a passer consistently all season. Mm-hmm. So I think they have Puka. I mean, the way you hear them talk about Stafford and Puka, it is clear that they know, that's where the Rams can just kill you. And I think though that the Kyren Williams to the run game situation, the Bears are at their best when Dennis Allen can cook, when he can come up with some 3rd and 7 look that even a Matthew Stafford might struggle with.
Ooh.
And if you can't stop Kyren Williams on 1st and 2nd down, you're never going to allow Dennis Allen to give you those looks on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. So I think that's the thing. Early in that game last week, Josh Jacobs was just getting 5, 6, 7 yards every touch. Second half, 1 yard, no yards, lost a yard. That changed the game. The Bears ramped up the run defense. They forced Green Bay into all these 3rd and not so manageables, and they took advantage. So I think, to me, it's not even worth saying they could do this to Stafford, they could do this to Kanuka. There's nothing they could do to those guys really. So the best thing they have to hope for is, can they just force Stafford into as many uncomfortable situations? And he's only going to be uncomfortable, I think, if it's 3rd and long. And even then, you don't know, because he gets the ball out so quick. He doesn't get sacked. So it's a brutal matchup for a defense that just gives up so many yards and really relies on the takeaways. But I do think that they did a lot of nice things in the second half that they can hopefully build on. But this could be a game where they're both in the high 20s, low 30s.
Okay, I see that. It's awesome that you said that about Dennis Allen. Maybe give him, I love that you have this, maybe give Matthew Stafford something he hasn't seen. Because if you heard Stafford after that game last week against the Panthers, you're hey, the Panthers did this and they've never done that before. And he was there's really nothing in this league I haven't seen. So I think I've seen it all. And, he's not saying it in an arrogant way. He has seen pretty much everything out there. Enjoy the atmosphere, Kevin. Enjoy Soldier Field, the city, until that game kicks off. And it's just been a great ride to watch, but it just seems like it's just kind of getting going. And when we see what 26 is going to be like, Bears fans, don't be nervous. It's going to be okay. Enjoy this. Enjoy it.
Thanks, James. It's been fun.
Yep. All right, moving on with our Thursday road trip. Good buddy Chad Graff joins us covering the Patriots brilliantly for The Athletic, and he has this one against the Houston Texans coming to town. And I think we saw what happened with Aaron Rodgers, Chad, and this is the number one question everybody's asking. How does that offensive line, how does Drake May handle this pass rush that comes from the Houston Texans? They don't do a whole lot of things exotically. They don't blitz a ton. Everybody blitzes, but they don't really do it very often. They just bring that 4 and they come after you. Like, what do you think Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniel are looking at going, how do we keep Drake May upright?
Well, what's amazing about this is it feels so rarely you're going into a playoff game thinking, hey, if this one matchup goes drastically either way, ball game. Like if Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson ruin the lives of Morgan Moses and Will Campbell, like, hey, go enjoy Denver. You're going to have a lot of fun in that AFC Championship game or hosting the Bills or whatever. But if they can, and Will Anderson is so good, and Danielle Hunter, like when Danielle Hunter is your second best pass rusher, what are we talking about? Like that's insane. And so if they can, they're going to get theirs. But if the Patriots can limit that a little bit, and when they do get home, not have the catastrophes, which for the most part, Drake's been good. Drake has been good about limiting those bad decisions, limiting the fumbles. However, interestingly, it did prop up a bit last week against the Chargers. They had some fumble luck where when Khalil Mack and others on the Chargers got home, it didn't impact things because they just scooped up the ball. But that happens again. Like, you're living a dangerous life. So there's a lot else to this game. I don't think that the Patriots are overly concerned about the Texans offense. I don't think they're overly concerned about a lot of other aspects. But oh my God, if you don't stop Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, like, good night.
Yeah, and what I'm fascinated about is we saw Will Anderson slide over, which he doesn't do very often, to that right defensive end spot against the Steelers, which would mean if he does that for a number of snaps going against Will Campbell over there, right, at that left tackle spot, and that speed to power that Will Anderson has is just, are we going to be talking about arm length a lot if things don't go well in New England if that doesn't happen?
Unfortunately for Will Campbell, fair or not, anytime he struggles, arm length is the conversation. Now, for a little bit of background, those two are familiar with each other. They grew up in the South going up against each other, LSU, Alabama. They've had some big-time matchups before, so I'm curious to see what D'Amico Ryans does in terms of where he's lining up his two awesome defensive ends. Now, Drake May's first start in what he described as something that feels like 10 years ago was just last season, midway through. They'd make the change of quarterback, Jacoby Brissett out, Drake May in, and it was against the Houston Texans. Drake called that earlier this offseason his welcome to the NFL moment when Danielle Hunter flies around the edge, and granted the offensive line was terrible last year, but Danielle Hunter flies around the edge, smokes Drake fumbles, and that was a moment that Drake said was like, okay, now I get it. Now I see what NFL speed looks like. Now I feel what it's like to get hit by these guys. I get it now. So Drake has come so far since then, but this is a little reminder of like, hey man, you cannot hold the ball against these guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a number one. When we look at the other side of the ball, give me the latest on Christian Gonzalez, because I mean, we know he's one of the best corners in football. It doesn't look, and remember they played Monday night, the Texans, with Nico Collins and their star number one wide receiver. Is there an advantage, you think, if Nico Collins doesn't play and Christian Gonzalez does play, for that secondary against a group that still is pretty good? Christian Kirk had a career high in that game against the Steelers. Do you think that shifts things dramatically for a Patriots defense?
I do think that changes things quite a bit. And at first, they both go into the concussion protocol. Obviously, the Patriots played 24 hours before the Texans, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, I was thinking, okay, this is, it's fair, I guess. They're losing their top number one wide receiver. Yeah. This team's losing their number one cornerback, both awesome players. But it is looking like Christian Gonzalez is going to play. Now, it's hard to speculate too much with these head injuries. Things can change, but he was a limited participant at Wednesday's practice, which is a step in the right direction. I think it indicates that he's in stage 4 of the concussion protocol, so he's not too far removed from being fully cleared to play. And has not had a concussion earlier this season, unlike Collins, which I think helps his case. So that's a huge, huge advantage because while this Patriots defense is a little bit susceptible against the run, while their pass rush is just okay, their secondary has been awesome. Like, they are at the top of the league in terms of EPA per play against the pass. They will cover players very well. Carlton Davis on the other side of Christian Gonzalez allows them to play a lot of man defense. Marcus Jones is maybe a Pro Bowl or like borderline all-pro in the slot this season, not just a punt returner. And then they've got the two safeties, Hawkins and Woodson, on the back end that just cover up for the rest. So very good secondary for the Patriots. And if Collins doesn't play, like, I think that's a massive advantage for the Pats.
I really do. Like I mentioned, that career high from Christian Kirk. He goes for 144 off of 8 catches in that game. He's not Nico Collins. I like Jaden Higgins a lot. The Texans, when I talk to people down there, Chad, really, really like Higgins. He could be the one that kind of slides in the place of Nico Collins. They think he could have a breakout in some senses. Some people loved him through the draft. He's had a really good showing in a lot of the times that they are trying to feature him at times in practice to see if they can do it, I'm told. But we'll just see. He's not Nico Collins. And I wanted to mention this just so everybody knows. CJ Stroud with Nico on the field, 65% completion percentage with a 97.4 quarterback rating. Without him, a 60% completion percentage, and his passer rating drops to an 86.3, and he gets sacked almost about a rate on full one more than the other. You mentioned the run game. I want to talk about the Patriots run game and like what has happened to Ramondre Stevenson over these last several weeks. Like, take us inside the building. What has changed with him as a running back over these last several weeks, because he's been outstanding?
So 2 things have changed, and this is a fascinating discussion that I don't think we've talked enough about. One is stylistically, the Patriots have changed. They had one of the worst running offenses in all of the NFL through the first 12 weeks of the season, could not get anything going. So the bye week arrives, they have a late bye. This is a chance for Josh McDaniels and his staff, Mike Vrabel and those guys, to sit down and think, what are we doing wrong? Like, Drake is having an MVP season. How can we not run the ball? What they come out with is a plan to use a lot more big personnel. And I think you'll probably see this against the Texans, a team that loves to live in nickel defense. The Patriots are going to use 6 offensive linemen or 22 personnel to force you into your base defense. They love to pass out of that, especially with the play action. But that 6th offensive lineman that they use so often really freed up a lot of schemes and what Josh McDaniels is trying to do with the running game. It's allowed them to be so much better. And then the other part of it is TreVeyon Henderson. We've seen his breakout over the second half and the explosiveness that he provides. But Ramondre Stevenson had fumbling woes at the start of the season on top of fumbling woes the previous year and the year before that. And so that was, I think, a tipping point where things really could have changed and he could have gone in the tank and it could have gone south. But as we've seen all season with the Patriots, every lever that Mike Vrabel is pulling is working out perfect for them. And so in those hard times, week 5, week 6, he came out and said, I'm not benching this guy. Like, people like me were like, you have to bench him. You drafted TreVeyon Henderson. Like, sit this guy. He keeps fumbling. Yeah. He didn't do that. He came out and said, I'm sticking with him. I'm riding with this guy. I trust him. And I think that confidence has gone a long way for Ramondre. Like, he was a high-profile recruit. He played at Oklahoma. You don't just suddenly learn how to hold on to the ball in like year 7 of the NFL. So I think a lot of it was upstairs, and Mike Vrabel just giving him that confidence boost, I think, went a long way for him.
Yeah, that's big. And we talk about these pass rushers so much. That's why I want to see if the Patriots can run the ball. Because, yes, Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson Jr., I get a ton of credit. That rotation in the middle for this Texans defense is very good. And Autry and Rankins and Tommy T, like that group does a better job than maybe a lot of people understand because of the way they're at. And I love that you mentioned the 6th offensive lineman, because what does Houston usually do, right? They put you in a bind because you have to keep a back or a tight end in to even chip when they rush forward. That's how good they are. And they love to change the numbers. So with that said, last one I have for you is, if you're Drake May and Josh McDaniels, you're going through this entire week, are you more concerned with the pass rush or the way this secondary plays with guys that just fly all over the field, from Lassiter to Stingley to Bullock, who's outstanding and nobody talks about him, to Petrie, one of the best guys in the middle of the field? Man, it's wild when you mention all their names and how good they are. What's the bigger concern, you think, in that offensive meeting room?
Just to pause there, it is absolutely insane that they have all of those guys are this good in pass defense, and it feels like nobody talks about them. And I get it, like Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, like that's going to take the attention. When Danielle Hunter's maybe the freakiest athlete I've ever seen. Like when you would watch him coming off the field at training camp, he looks like a superhero. It is. On a field of like top 0.1 percentile athletes, he stands out as different from everybody. And so that's a long way of saying, I think you got to be more worried about the pass rush. The secondary, awesome. What they have back there is incredible. But especially for a Patriots offensive line that is coming off of some struggles against Khalil Mack and the Chargers, Will Campbell, I think a really good, positive rookie season for him. But he suffered a late season injury, went on IR. When he came back, he just hasn't, I think, been totally the same since that knee injury, which was a pretty serious knee injury, missed 4 games. And so to come back from that and be like, all right, well, first guy up is Will Campbell. Oh, you passed that test? Great. Here's Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. So I think that's the spot you got to be a little concerned with. On the right side, Morgan Moses, their right tackle. People know him. He's been around, 34 years old. He's been better than I think just about anybody expected as a 34-year-old. But this is a different challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I get it. It's always, who gets to the ball first, who gets to the ball quickest, and how that works. But man, that secondary turns the ball over. They're so sticky in coverage. They help that group up front so much. It's going to be a tall task, and I think it's what we all want to see Drake May go against, right? Like I think it's just fans, we all want to see Drake May do it, and you'll watch it in person, Chad. Enjoy the game. Thanks for stopping by, and say hello to the rest of the beat for me. Wonderful folk.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
See you, bud. Just an unbelievable packed show for everybody that stuck with us all the way to the end. Thank you so much. Thank you to Dianna Russini, our senior NFL insider here at The Athletic, giving us all the great nuggets about John Harbaugh. She'll be with us regularly as we continue to go through this coaching carousel, and all of our unbelievable beat reporters here at The Athletic, a group that is unmatched in this industry. Thank you guys for joining us, and make sure you check us out on Monday when we're going to be breaking down everything that transpired this weekend in the divisional round as we get ready for the championship round. Who's moving forward? Why are they moving forward? What we need to see. It's all Monday. Enjoy your weekend of divisional football.
Thanks for watching Scoop City. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment. New episodes of Scoop City drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.